So let's just take a look at Learning Suite for today. So we'll be talking about VBA. We'll be working with this workbook right here. So go ahead and download this airline data workbook. We'll work in that workbook, and we'll go ahead and get started. First, quick look at some testimonials. I wonder if I can zoom in here. This is from a former student. Professor, sometimes I go to university class and wonder, why do I have to learn this? How will this benefit my life? How many of you have had that thought this semester? Okay, now be honest about this class. A couple of you right down here in front. Well, at least when it comes to the VBA module for your IS 201 course, the question has a clear answer. My life will benefit almost every day. Just a few weeks after your course ended, I was able to use VBA to create a cold emailing macro integrated with Microsoft Outlook that enabled me to send personalized, so-called, messages to hundreds of emails at a time with attachments. Using that tool, I was able to secure a private equity internship and get contact with numerous others. Yeah, apparently hundreds of others. In New York, that will be hugely beneficial to my career. At the full-time job I currently work, I've used VBA multiple times to contribute significantly to our team, impressing my supervisor. What's more, I was able to complete an unpaid banking intern work on the side, and I've been able to create VBA macros to increase the accuracy and speed of my work. I have found that VBA code is available on the internet for almost any task you want to perform. Just look it up, edit it for a few minutes, and voila! You have a brand new tool. The possibilities are endless. In short, VBA is fabulous. Okay, here's another guy. Thanks for teaching all the skills I learned in 201. I just received an offer 55 applications later. Applying to 55 jobs or internships, I'm not sure which one. Oh, internships, yeah, from some company to intern in their HR department for process improvement. The only reason I received consideration was because they required VBA experience, even though it was an HR internship. So he says if he teaches class again, tell the 201 students that this class will help them have the same experience that I had to take it seriously, even if they're studying something like HR. Apparently Nathan was thinking, I'm in HR, why do I have to take IS 201? I'm not going to need it. He found out that it was really valuable for him. Anyway, that's the couple of testimonials about this class, about this particular content that we're getting into. All right, so as you're getting that workbook open, let me just give you a little history of macros or kind of programming in spreadsheets. Back in the 1970s, we had the very first spreadsheet program. It was called VisiCalc. Oh, I forget the name of the company that made it. It was pretty simple. It had rows, it had columns, you could put a formula that referenced the precedent cell, that was it. And we were amazed. In fact, it was its successor, SuperCalc, in combination with the Apple II computer that made businesses for the first time look at the PC and say, you know, that personal computer might actually be useful. And so that was kind of the beginning of spreadsheets. Roll the clock forward to the early 80s, and spreadsheets are being used pretty extensively now in businesses. And we find out that we're doing exactly the same keystrokes over and over and over again. I say keystrokes because it's before the mouse became popular at all. Wait, can you imagine an Apple computer without a mouse? Yeah. There are lots of Apples before the Macintosh computer was delivered, and that was kind of the first broadly accepted machine with a mouse. So it was all keystrokes. In fact, back in those days when we said macro, someone said, hey, why don't we just record the keystrokes that we're typing and then find a way to play them back? And that's what macros used to be like, just a series of keystrokes. When you went to record a macro, it would just be, say, hey, I want to make my macro right here, and you'd get the keystrokes that you typed just going down from that cell on down. It was a list of keystrokes. You wanted to edit the macro, you just went to that cell and changed the keystrokes that were there, and you're in business. Then in 1995, Microsoft said, the mouse has kind of changed things, and it's kind of difficult to just do everything with a keyboard. How about this? Instead of recording the keystrokes, let's record the activities that you do and actually write them out in a computer language. And the language they chose for that was called Visual Basic for Applications. It is the same language that we will be learning today. Visual Basic for Applications has a big brother called Visual Basic. We could use Visual Basic to write a program like Excel or Word or PowerPoint. It's a full-blown programming environment. Visual Basic for Applications is really similar, but it has to be hosted in another application. You can't write a standalone program for VBA. VBA has to have Excel open, and then with it, lots of great stuff with VBA. So it's a programming language, but it's not one that you can write independent standalone programs with. You just use it to modify or to kind of augment your work you're doing in Excel. Nonetheless, you can do great and wonderful things with it. So let's take a look. First thing we have to do if we're going to work with Visual Basic is we got to go to the Developer tab. That's right by the View menu. Do you have a Developer tab on your Excel? How many of you are saying no Developer tab? Oh, it's almost everybody. It doesn't mean your Excel is broken. All it means is that the good folks at Microsoft realize that there's so much power available in VBA that they don't want mere mortals to have access to it. And so it's not accessible out of the box. What you have to do is you have to modify the ribbon to show it, but it's pretty easy. I'm going to choose File from the Excel menu up there on the ribbon, File, and then I'm going to choose Options. And here in Options, there's a choice for Customize Ribbon. So File, Options, Customize Ribbon. And here, there's just a checkbox for the Developer tab. You just have to check it. You could uncheck the Home tab. What would that do? Take away your Home tab. Why would you want to take away your Home tab? I don't know. Maybe your roommate walked away from his computer and left it logged in, and your April Fool's Day is coming up or something. No, that would be a sin. That would be sinful. You'd have to repent. But on the other hand, I do encourage repentance, and so I don't know. Anyway, so all we're talking about is the Developer tab, so check the Developer tab. Once you've got the Developer tab checked, then you should have the Developer tab showing up here. And now you are in good shape to be able to do stuff with VBA. Now, here's the idea. Most of what we do in VBA, we're just going to be saying, hey, we're looking at a flow chart. We want to actually write the program that does this. But one of the fabulous things about VBA inside of Excel is that you can record yourself doing something and it will write the code for you. Any other programming environment where you say, I'm going to learn how to computer program, it's like you and Google are going to figure this out. How do you figure out how to do something you don't know how to do? Well, you got to Google it and hope somebody wrote something about it. That's not true in Excel. In Excel, if you're thinking, man, I wonder how to make a chart with VBA, no problem. Record yourself making a chart, and it will write the code for you. So that's the idea. We're going to do a little bit of that today, but most of it we're going to be writing the code out by hand. So let's just see what is it like to record ourselves doing something and have it write the program for us. So let's just suppose that I'd like to, with a keystroke, I'd like to be able to change two properties of the cell that I currently have highlighted. I want to make it the background red, and I want to change the letters to white. So kind of, just kind of a different formatting that I want to apply to that. So, we could write that out in Visual Basic code. And we don't know how to do that, so we'd have to Google it and whatever and take a while, or we can just record ourselves doing it. Here's how we do it. On the Developer tab, there's a button right here called Record Macro. We click on Record Macro, and it says, great, what do you want to call your macro? So we're about to do a set of activities. Excel is going to record those for us, and then we're going to be able to look at the code that it generated. But we have to have all that set of activities. We've got to give a name to that whole set, and that's what we're doing here. The name has to start with a letter, and it can be any combination of letters, numbers, and the underscore character. So I'm going to call this, I'll just call it Make Red. Make Red. Ah, look, I can put a shortcut key on it. Let's suppose, I don't know, it's kind of like style. It's applying some kind of style, so why don't we call it Control S? Oh, wait a minute. Control S, Control S, Control S. That sounds familiar. What does Control S do? Not anymore, it doesn't. Now Control S runs this macro. See why I want mere. Like, if my mother got a hold of this, it would be the end of the world as we know it. She'd be calling me up 2 or 3 times a day. My Excel won't save. Every time I save, it tries to make the cell red that I'm on. I don't know what's going on. All right, Mom, have you been playing with the Developer tab again? Oh, yes, the buttons are so cute on that tab. Okay, cut it out, Mom. It'll be okay. Instead of Control S, I'm going to put a capital S. And then it's going to adapt that key to Control plus Shift plus S, and I feel pretty good about that. Folks, we're going to store this in this workbook. When I create a macro, it's actually going to go into some workbook. And I have a couple of choices. One, I can put it in this workbook, which is what we're going to do. I can make a brand new workbook, which I have never, ever gotten the urge to do with a macro. or I can put it in my personal macro workbook. If I put it in the personal macro workbook, it will be available regardless of which workbook is open. If it's in this workbook, it will only be available when this workbook is open. The personal macro workbook is just a workbook that's hidden that Excel opens up every time it starts. So if you put a macro in your personal macro workbook, next time you open Excel, it's going to say, oh, there's a personal macro workbook here. Open up that workbook and hide it, because any macro that's in an open workbook is available, regardless of which workbook is active. So if this is something that you want to always be available to you, you would put it in your personal macro workbook. If it's something particular to this workbook, we'll put it in this workbook. I'm going to go ahead and put this one in this workbook. Wow, yeah, there we go. And we can put a description. Make the current C-U-R-R-E-N-T cell red background and white letters, white font, white letters. All right. Now, as soon as you press OK, you've got to be careful, because now everything you're doing is being recorded. Well, actually, even before you press OK, everything you do is being recorded in heaven. But now it's being recorded in Excel too, so you have to be extra careful. I mean, I haven't done anything yet, but if I was just to click here on this cell, it would record, select that cell. Now, do I want to click on a cell? No, because I want to change the cell. Because when I run this macro, I say, well, I want to say whenever the cell is active, that's the one that I want to change. If I click somewhere, it's going to record, go to that cell. Don't click anything, for heaven's sakes. Other question? If you click on another window, it's not going to record another window. It's only going to record what's happening in this workbook. If I click on another tab, it'll record that. But if I click, inside Excel, but if I click on another window, it's not going to know anything about that, because it's only recording what's happening in Excel. All right, so now I just want to make the background red, so I just come to my Home tab, and I change the fill color to this kind of dark red, very nice. And I can see that makes the letters pretty hard to read, and so I'm going to change the lettering to white. So that's what it's going to do. Now I'm going to click on Stop. So on my Developer tab, the button that I used to start recording is now a Stop Recording button, and that's great. Right? And incidentally, whenever you're recording, you get a little Stop button down here in the lower left-hand corner as well. Either one of those will do the trick. Very important to remember to stop recording. One time I was recording a macro, and my wife called me. I don't know what we talked about, but I forgot I was recording a macro. And I went back to work in Excel for like 3 hours before I realized I was still recording. I wrote this huge long program. It was thousands of lines long. It was a beautiful thing. It wasn't good for anything, but it was a lot of code. You just had to put it. You got to remember to quit recording. Okay, so now we should be able to go to a different cell and press, what did we make it? Control-Shift-S? And then that should now just run that macro and highlight the cells that we've done. So we recorded it. It remembered what we did, and now we can play it back with the hotkey. That's great. Other ways that we can play that back. One is that we can come here to the Developer tab, and we can view our macros. There's only one. It's pretty easy to find. And then you can click Run from there, and it will run the macro as well. Incidentally, on the View tab, even if your Developer tab isn't showing, on the View tab, there's also a way to get to your list of macros. Change some properties of it, such as the shortcut key. You can come to Options here, and you can change that back to whatever you want. But that's the idea of recording a macro. And if you don't know anything about Visual Basic, that's it. That's the extent. You can record yourself doing something and play it back. But you're in luck, because I'm going to show you how to understand the language that it wrote, and you're going to be able to edit and make changes and so forth. But at this point, I want to make sure that everyone is able to get something to turn red. And if you aren't, then raise your hand. Is that a question or is that TA? Help from TA is right up here. So yeah, get your hands up if it's not quite working. And question? Oh, there's something about Control Z. Oh, let me tell you about Control Z. Stand by. Woo. The way Control Z works, the way undo is that Excel list. It's called the undo list. It keeps track of all the activities that you've done. And then when you hit Control Z, it just kind of backs up through that list. Anytime you run a macro, It blows away the undo list. It's not that you can't undo something that was written with a macro, is that at the point that you run that macro, anything, ability of it, gone. There's no really good reason for that. It's kind of a strange behavior, but we have to live with it. Why do we have to live with it? Because there's no credible threat against Microsoft's dominance in the spreadsheet market. Microsoft should fix that. They should let the undo pass the macro, but folks, you can stay in Windows. So you've got Mac. This stuff is kind of available on my questions. Go ahead and we'll get that going. So, because something to do with my notes. Back you go and read this. So that's created my macro here. Called make red. That's the name of the macro I give it. Remember, multiple steps are happening. They all have to be down with this one name, make red. That's the name for this set of steps. It starts with keyword sub. It ends with keyword end sub. This is what's called a sub-procedure. Sub-procedure is a macro in VBA. What's different? You sound so much smarter if you say sub-procedure. What do you say? Okay, I know if you've never heard of them, macros might sound familiar, but they're a VBA person, you'll say, well, yeah, I'm confident in creating sub-procedure in VBA to automate specific tasks in Excel. That's the kind of thing you're looking for. Sounds like you're top. Sub-procedure. First, notice that the quote is going to appear in green. The editor's going to make it look green, but because it starts with a quote, it's just going to say that's a comment. It's a notice. Remember, the interpreter, the program that's going to actually run this, is going to forward that. That's a nice thing for you. I mean, it right here. It's like that you saw working today. And so this turns out the macro recorder isn't really that good. And so I didn't change the pattern. I'm going to record the way you formatted it. Striped or polka. It anyway. And so really change the color. Number 192, that's that dark red. And so it said, hey, we're going to do something with the interior selection, whatever cell is selected. We're changing the color to 192. I don't want to get too hung up in this notation here because what we're going to work with syntactically is a lot simpler than the way this got recorded. But that's the idea. For those of you that have a line getting selected, you've got something that looks like this. It probably says range, R-A-N-G-E, and then in parentheses, it says like B5 dot select. So this is just a statement that says, hey, we want to select a particular cell. We're referring to a particular cell. It seems funny to call it a range when it's only one cell, but in VBA, every cell or set of cells is a range. This is just a range of cells with only one cell in it. Range B5, and then we're identifying that cell, and then we're saying select. And so if you click somewhere before you made something red, then that's the line you have. You can delete it, or you can do what we refer to as commenting it out. I can change it into a comment. By putting a single quote in front of it, it says, I'm not sure I want to delete that line because it's kind of a nice looking line, but I don't want it to execute. Make it into a comment, and it will be ignored by the interpreter. So those of you that had that problem, you should be able to just get rid of that line either by turning it into a comment or deleting it, and then it should proceed and color the cell, whichever cell is active. Did that work for anyone? Is there anyone still not? By the way, how do you test it again? Then you can just go back to Excel and test it the way you want to, Control-Shift-S, and it will execute. See, I might have enough room on the screen to show both. Oh yeah, that's kind of nice. Oh, that'll work well. Okay, questions on this so far? What we're about to do and spend time on, is a question over here? Is that just TA? What we're about to do now doesn't depend on this, but I just wanted to get you started with the fact that, hey, you can record yourself doing something and then go look and see what it wrote, and you can start to make changes. Like, for instance, let's just do this. Let's just make a change here. Let's suppose 192 isn't the color I'm after. I don't even know. 192 is dark red. Well, we could make a change to this. I don't know. There's like 16 million colors. So get creative. Why don't we do color number 20,000? I have no idea what color number 20,000 is. But I've just changed what this program does. So if I come back here and run it again, Control-Shift-S, it's going to put whatever color number 20,000 is. I can tell you that color number 20,001 is going to look exactly the same. I mean, it is so slightly different, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. But, 30,000 would probably be a different color. And you can tell it's a different color of green. I mean, there's 16 million of them, so going another 10,000 doesn't change it by much. So the point is, come here, don't be afraid to kind of play with it and kind of work with it. Questions? This should all still feel very uncomfortable to you. Go ahead. Oh, I can undo what I just did. I just have to undo it by hand. I got to come over here and change the color back and change the font color back. But Control-Z is hopeless. It's useless once I start playing macros. For that reason, it's like a great idea to save before you run. I'm not quite sure what's going to happen here, so I'll just choose, I can just click two places. I can click on the little, the save here, or over here in my VBA editor, I can click on the little save button here. The macro itself is just a part of the workbook. There's no way to save the macro separate from the workbook. It's a part of the workbook. So the way you save the macro is by saving the workbook. So you save it and then you're ready to go. Incidentally, this works okay when you're saving, a file that I've given you. But let's just take a look. Let me do a file save as. You don't need to do this along with me. Just pay attention. When I say save as, you'll notice that this is a macro-enabled workbook. The extension is SM. It's a macro-enabled workbook. When you create a brand new workbook from scratch, it wants to save as an XLSX file. XLSX, no macros allowed. It's a security thing. They want to make sure that and the fact that there's no way to run a macro from an XLSX workbook. And so they're just trying to make sure that when you look at this file name, you'll know there's a macro in that workbook. Or there could be if it's an XLSM. But you've got to make that choice. So when you're first saying save as, you've got to change it from XLSX to XLSM. Otherwise, you'll save it. Here's what happens. You'll save it. I'll do it right now. I'll come here as XLSX. I'll click save. And it's going to tell us, hey, there's some features you can't save in a macro-free workbook. What is it? The VBA project. The VB project. You can't do it. You're probably not going to read that. You're going to go, yeah, whatever. Yes. What happened to your macros? Poof. They're gone. Can you get them back? Yeah, you can write them again. That's how you would get them back. So that's a mistake you will typically make once, right? You'll just click save. You'll say, I don't know, whatever that says, yes. And it'll be gone. So anyway, you got to make sure that you do macro-enabled workbook, XLSM. And it's already saved, so we're okay. Okay, I am going to go ahead and get rid of all this red, white, and green. And so let me just come here, do this. You're right, I got to do it by hand. So I'll change the font back to black or automatic and change the color to no fill. And then we're ready to take a look at what we're really setting out to accomplish today. So let's just talk about the data that we have here. So this is data that I downloaded this morning from CNN.com. Here's the URL that I got, used to pull out one of these sets of numbers. And this is just a bunch of stock tickers from the airline industry. So here's American Airlines, here's Alaskan Airlines, here's Delta Airlines. I'm not sure what CPA is. It's probably some airline for accountants. So they got their own airline or something. There's JetBlue, SkyWest, most United Airlines, Virgin Air. A lot of these you're familiar with. And so what we have here is this is the price that their stock was selling at the close of the market yesterday. This is the price their stock was selling at the open of the market today. And so there's something like after-hours trading. I don't know how all that works in finance. Your finance major could probably tell me more about that. Could be that there was some news that got announced after the close of the market, and it changed how people valued the stock, one way or the other. So here's what our task is to do then. What we want to do is we want to take the previous close and the current open for today's trading, and we want to write down what the percentage change was, and then we want to put a result here that says it's either an increase, it's a decrease, or it's flat. Did it tend to be increase or decrease across the whole set? That's the idea. We've got a flowchart called Flowchart 1, and we'll take a look. Let's see, let me zoom out just a bit. We still see that okay? Okay, so we start. And then we're going to input CP and OP. What's CP and OP? CP is the closing price, OP is the opening price. We've got another variable, percentage change, which we're going to calculate according to this algorithm. And we're going to do a decision block. If the percentage is greater than 0, so if that condition is true, then our result is going to be increased. Result's just a variable that has a textual description of the performance overnight. If it's false, well, we don't know if it's decreased or flat, so we come into a different decision. If the percentage change is less than 0, then the result is decreased. Otherwise, it's going to be flat. We're just going to print out that result, and we're done. It's a pretty simple flow chart. The fact that we've got two decisions here nested right next to each other is going to give us some complexity, but we're doing okay. Questions on the flow chart? Now, remember that a flow chart has absolutely no idea what environment it's being implemented in. This is not an Excel flowchart or Excel VBA flowchart. This is just a flowchart. It's a description of the algorithm. We somehow have to get this information brought into the system. We somehow have to be able to print this information back out from the system. So we've got some flexibility about how we do that here in VBA. We can put up some kind of dialog box that prompts it. Type in the opening price, user, type in the closing price, and then display it. But since this data is already sitting right here on the sheet, we can just read it in right off of the sheet. And so that's the approach that we're going to take. And in fact, you'll notice that we've got a place to put out those two values, the percentage change and the result. And you'll notice that's what those things are. Percentage change and the result is what we're trying to display out. So we're ready to start to implement this flowchart. To do that, we're just going to create a new, myself a little more room here. We're going to create a new sub-procedure. Now this sub-procedure we created by recording. But because we are no longer mere mortals in the Excel world, we can create this from scratch. Okay. First thing to realize is that if I'm going to save any code in VBA, it has to be in a module. Look over here on the left. We've got this Project Explorer. It's telling me about this worksheet. Here's the project. It's airline data.xlsm. It's got 3 worksheets, something about the workbook itself. Module. There's a module called Module 1. Our VBA code has to be inside a module, and that's where we are right now, right? If I was to click on, well, trust me, we're looking at the module right now. So here's the thing. Oh, some of you may not have option explicit. How many of you don't have option explicit at the top? Don't worry about it. Option explicit can be there or not be there. It's kind of an advanced feature. For everything we do, it's going to be fine whether it's there or not. But the point is, inside a module, I can put multiple sub-procedures. I'm going to add a new sub-procedure right above the one that's here. So I'm just going to come up here, hit enter a few times, and move that one down just to give myself some room. I need some coding room up here. And so I'll just type it out. Sub. And this one I'm going to call, I'll just call it summarized data. S-U-M-M-A-R-I-Z-E. Data. No spaces, no special characters. Well, underscore would be okay. Now, when I hit enter, something great and wonderful happens. Watch what happens. I'm starting with the keyword sub. I hit enter. The editor says, oh, you got a sub. You're going to need an end sub. I'll put that in for you. Nice, huh? If you're on the Mac, by the way, it didn't do that. You have to type in the end sub on your own. And it puts these parentheses here. These parentheses here are for advanced use. We're not going to cover them in this class. They let us do something else that's kind of neat and advanced. We don't cover it in the first 5 days, but it puts they got to be there to put them in. Did I see a question over here? No? Okay. So let's just take a look at what we're doing over here. So this says start. Great. We're started fine. Now input. We got to get this data in. When we say we got to get that data in, what are we going to put it into? And the answer is we're going to put it in some variables. And here's our variables right here. So CP, OP, and PCT. Let's take a look at it. CP. Here I'm going to create that variable. So kind of step one is allocate, create my variable. Maybe I'll put a comment in here. 1, create some variables. Single quote in front of that just makes a comment. That's a note. Here's how I do it. DIM stands for dimension. What it means is I'm setting up the amount, the size, the quantity, how much memory I need, and giving that memory a name. Remember that what a variable is, it's just a location. It's a named location where I can put a value and bring it back. If you want to think about it like an envelope with the name of the variable on the front, you can do that. But it's really a location in memory that gets a nickname to it. I give it the nickname right after the word dim. So dim CP as, then I have to give it a type. Like 4 data types I'm going to expect you to know for this class. And when I say for this class, I mean for the exam, which is a week from Wednesday. It's in class right here, a week from Wednesday. Okay, so I say as I'm giving it a data type. It has to be able to take numeric value, and it has to be able to take a decimal. And so I've got a couple of choices for that one. These are pretty small numbers. I mean, it's like 120 bucks, 80 bucks or something. These are relatively small numbers, and so I'm going to use the type called single. This is for like a small floating point number. And by small, I mean 7 digits or less. I mean 7 digits total. I don't care where the decimal point is. If you want to have like 1 million, that takes 7 characters. You can do that here, but there's no room for any decimal point on it. If you want to do something with really high precision, like pi 3.15, what is it? 3.1415927. Anyway, if you want of pi, 6 digits past pi, you can do that in single because you've got 7 digits total to work with. Doesn't matter where the decimal point is. What if I need more digits? Instead of a single precision floating point number, I would use a double precision. We have to do double instead. And so that's one of the other types I'll want you to know. So I want you to know single. Maybe I'll just put a note here to the reading. Let's talk about it in the reading. So you've got that one in the reading. Dim CP, I'll also want my opening price. OP as single. Percentage, also going to have a decimal point. Dim PCT as single. Now my result is going to be a collection of characters. That's really different. So it's going to be words, right? We can see the result is going to actually equal the word increase, decrease, flat. So result as, and the way I do for characters is string. So dim result as string. So this is any alphanumeric characters. Alpha, A-L, A-L, A-N-U-M-E-R-C-C. Characters. Ooh, sound like counteract. C-H-A-R-A-C-P-E-R. Okay. Incidentally, let's go ahead and kind of anticipate where we're headed with this, and that is that we're going to want to be able to do more than just one row at a time. Since we're talking data types, let's declare another variable. I'm going to call it, we don't need it, we don't really need it based on what we see here. I know what's coming, so let's just put it here so we can talk about it. I'll name the variable row, and this one's going to be as an integer. So integers plus or minus 32,000. If I need a bigger number, other integer types that could only, no decimals allowed, but they can get pretty big, plus or minus 2 billion. We have ways to go even larger if we need to. But integers can be the type that we use for integers. Okay. So then, step 2, we've got those variables declared. Step 2 is going to be take in some input. So let's somehow get some input to work with here. And so now we're looking at this point right here, on our flow chart. So we've got to bring in the closing price and the opening price. Let me come back here and look at my airlines sheet where the data are. And so let's just start off by working on row number 4. So my closing price is here in C4. That's the location. So let's see, how do we read the value off of C4? Here's how we do it. Just like we do in the picture here, we say, well, similar to these. Let's just talk about it. I'm going to do it like this. The name of the variable, CP, gets assigned to, that's how I say that equal sign. CP gets assigned to, and then I give it something that it gets assigned to. In this case, it's going to be cells, row number 4, column number 3. And I want the value of that cell. Okay. How many cells do I have in my workbook that meet that criterion for row and column? Row 4, column 3. How many cells meet that? It's more than one. One per sheet. And this workbook has 3 sheets. And so I have to hold it which sheet. So which sheet do you think it thinks I'm talking about? The first one? Not the first one. The second one? Not the second one. The third one? Not the third one. And yet there's only 3. So which one is it? Which one does it think I'm talking about? Not all of them. None of them. Oh, we're really narrowing it down now. It's one of them. Which one? The active one. Yeah, the current one. So this code would behave differently depending on which sheet is active. And since there's only one sheet here that has those numbers, maybe even before we start taking this number, we should say, and again, this is not in the flow chart, but this is just something I know about how to implement this in Excel. We're going to say, let's go ahead and activate the right sheet. So let me put a note in here, activate the data sheet. Activate T-I-V-A-T-E, data sheet. Whoa. Now, it turns out I know exactly how to type this line of code. But for a quick exercise, I want you to see if you can record yourself activating a sheet so you can find out what the code would look like to activate that sheet. So right now, you can just go ahead and come back here and say record and do it. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to try that. Just record yourself making a macro that activates the sheet so you can see the code that it generates. Oh yes, remember to stop recording, very important. Stop recording. Once you've actually successfully done that, created a macro that just activates the sheet, raise your hand. I just want to see, as we have them coming up, hold it for a second, then you can put it down. I want to be like popcorn. I want to see a hand down. So seconds to go. And then just review it. Then I'll do, if you didn't quite get to go, I'll take us through it again real quick. So remember to record a macro. I'm going to come to my developer tab, and I will choose record macro. Kind of small here. I'm going to go ahead and maximize, see what's going on. Record macro. I'll call it, I don't know, activate sheet. All I'm going to do is activate a sheet. Stop recording. I'll come back and look at my code. And it puts it in the same module. That's kind of handy. So I'm just going to copy that code and summarize data. Right where I said activate sheet, I'm going to paste in sheet off. Chart 1, what sheet do I want? Airline. Sheet airline.select. Did I spell it right? Airlines. Thank you. Can you just delete the absolutely? Everything sub to the end sub. Delete the whole block and you're okay to do it. It turns out, folks, that's a pretty common thing. When you're programming, I think, I don't know how to do that. Well, just record it, and then you can see the code, and you can just, modify it as you need to. Right. So now, when we run this, the very first thing that's going to happen is we're going to activate that sheet, and then we're going to read in this variable. Let's go ahead and read in the next variable as well, which is going to be in the same row, one more column over. That's going to be my opening price. So opening price is everything the same except for its column 4. All right. I'm going to go ahead and do the next step, then I'll give us a chance to get caught up and make sure that we're to this point. So I've got the input in. I've brought that into my program. I'm feeling pretty good about it. Next, I'm ready to calculate my next variable, which is the percentage change. And I've named that PCT. So PCT equals, the algorithm is spelled out for me here. So it is my opening price minus my closing price divided by the closing price times 100. It turns out the syntax, that's supposed to be divide, the syntax that we use in VBA is a very common general, just a kind of general syntax for languages for doing arithmetic stuff. It's the same way that we write it here in VBA. If only this were an image, I could copy and paste and bring it in. Let's do one more thing. Kind of really handy thing in this editor called the Debug Window or the immediate window. Let me show you how I could just put some output to it so I can see what's going on. I'm just going to say debug print, and I'm going to print out those 3 variables. Comma, my opening price, comma, my percentage. Result is not for the user. Unfortunately, that window is not showing for me. It's probably already showing for you, but if it's not, some other window that says immediate at the top of it showing. I'm just going to choose View Immediate Window or Control G, and that should bring that immediate window somewhere. For you, it's probably at the bottom. Let me get to go down to the bottom so it's kind of in the same place. Well, look at the document. The mouse is a little bit wonky on the machine. Now, when I see debug.print, now, have I assigned a shortcut key to it? There's no shortcut key. How am I going to run it? Well, it turns out that we've got a button right here. It looks like the play button on my DVD player at home. It's just a little green pointing to the right. So as long as my insertion point is inside the sub-procedure that I want to run, I should be able to click on that. So you'll see it actually activated the sheet. That's nice, activated the sheet. It read these values into the variables, CP, OP, and PCT, and then it printed those values out my immediate window. All right, at this point, I want to make sure you're getting to this. So if you're not here yet, let's pause, get your hands up, and let's have the TAs come and help and bring you along. All right, so look pretty a big idea that if you get it right now, you're okay. So remember, this is one inch. All right, I'm ready to condition, and here's what we do. That'd be that. For me, while I'm developing, when I'm done with this, that line's coming out. So I'm going to do it above this, and now I'm going to make a decision. Okay, here's how we do it. Diamond looks like this. If, in fact, let me put the syntax in first, and then we'll come along. If, then, hit enter a couple of times. You probably got a message box saying you have an error. Just say okay to that. Else, and if. What this is saying is, if in the true, execute whatever is after the then before the else. This is the true block, the true code. It's false, we jump execute what's here. So this is the false code. Okay, so now let's structure. When I see that diamond, I don't even have to think about it. I put that structure in. The thought. Nice, because it's actually in here. Remember, sometimes they're written as yes or no. This has to be true or false in the code. My first result characters. The VBA part of the language. I know it gets me to an object, it gets me over to the worksheets, figuring all this stuff out. Right here goes, oh, I know what that means. And the way I tell, don't try to figure this out. It's just a collection of characters. Around. Incidentally, this 100 right here is a numeric literal. It's just a literal value. Numeric literals don't need quotes. Anything that starts with a number, the only thing it could possibly be is a numeric literal. So the interpreter can figure that out. And it looks like the name of another procedure, it could be the name of a variable. And so I got to put quotes around to tell, don't try to figure this out. Just take these characters and store them. Go ahead. Are string case sensitive? The answer is yes. So when I see compare to that string literal or the string variable, lower, no problem. The editor lowercase would be okay. Yes. I am going to post this video online just as quick as I can after class. All right. Yeah, I get it. This is a videoable offense today. Am I still about it? What are we doing? Oh, okay. So we've handled this part true. Now the false part is a little more complex. structure, if, then, else, and. I'm going to be really careful for me to get confused. And so I want to all tabbed in. So I'm going to hit tab and make sure that everything comes in at the same level. So I'll do another if, then, else, and the computer. And I want here, break down and everything. That's tabbing. If p is less than 0, then I come this way equal. Or I have to be decreased. Thank you. Back to another variable here, which is next step is to show we have an immediate window. We're printing the result, we're presenting the percentage increase, we're done. But it makes a whole lot of sense to put it out here on the worksheet. After all, I got a whole column lined up for it right here. And it's really easy. Is there a question? A TA up here in the back? Right up here. Variable LCD. On the right, it's written into what's on the left. Well, folks, it's just the same thing in reverse. I'll call this step 3, which is, step 3, I don't know, step 3 anyway. Probably step 4. Step 3 should be somewhere else. We'll call this display output. And I'm just going to say, now some cell's value is going to take on PCT. It as a string literal. So I can put it in quotes and an F. This isn't working for you. Let's get TAs and I'll come and help you. because we've got just enough time to cover the next point, which is really important. And again, it's a brain pause. Let's make another quick change. So let's just do that. Right here. And so just before we take the input, and now, right at road, I write out. So now, I'll show. So now, bingo. Now, change it for me. I row. Now is let's run through this, and after we've done, I mean, all we did, I'm running this. Let's just tell the computer to add as a loop built into it. Are we done? We get out. Not done. Up here, values. Now, we've got to do something to make this start here and then end down. I'm going to come up here to my input, beginning of my loop. The key word in VBA for the beginning of the loop is the word do, D-O. Condition right here on the until something equals true. until that cell that I'm looking at right here. So folks, this is column number 2. So let me just do this. I want to loop until row, whatever I am. Remember, row is going to go 1 more. It'll be 8. So now until row number 8, number 3 is equal to something. In fact, let's look at this. Let's just put in here, if we can see how this would execute, if I said until this was equal to JetBlue. JBLU. A little louder. Thank you, column 2. And I'm going to tab in everything inside this loop. Let's tab that over. Maybe even 2 levels so I can see it. So my loop starts here, it ends here, everything is inside of this. Whoops, this row here, number 7, starting at 7, that better be outside the loop. So let me bring that outside the loop. So now is when row is that false. Until this condition is true, this again, row is going to go from 8 to 9. Do all this again, add 1 to row. Row is going to be equal to 10. We look here, does it equal JetBlue? Until we find JetBlue. I don't really want to loop until we find JetBlue. I want to loop until we find blank. Well, that's how I do JetBlue. That's how I do JetBlue. That's how I do jib. That's how I do j. That's how I do nothing. It seems a little bit strange, doesn't it? Quote, quote. But that's a collection of characters with how many characters? None. It's called an empty string. And that's exactly what the value of a blank cell is. Okay, now we really do want to start at 4. And so I'm going to change this to start at 4 instead of starting at 7. I'll delete this data. It should be ready to run. This 4, plug in the values, increment, go to the next one, to the next one, and that should run through and put all those values in. We got 1 minute and only one more thing to do. Folks, I get that this loop, we did this loop pretty quickly. The good news is it's recorded. You'll be able to take a look at it. One last thing is that I'd like to be able to put a button somewhere on this form to be able to launch this macro. So let me do this. I'm going to put it right over here. I've got some white space right here. So back in my developer tab, I'm going to choose this little toolbox right here. It says Insert. And the very first tool is a button. Here it is. It's Form Controls button. That's what I want. I'm going to click that, and then I will click and drag to make the button. It immediately says, oh, a button. I bet you want to assign a macro to it. Yep. Summarize data. That's the one I'm after. We'll say OK. It's called button 1. I'll be able to click on it, change it to get summarize. SUMMARIZE. Didn't quite fit. I'll stretch it out a bit. And now if I delete that data off, click on the summarize button, it should run that code and bring it in. What's that? Oh, thank you. Folks, there's always a danger. The danger is whenever I make a loop that says do and loop, I might do something wrong here. For instance, if I had left this as a 3 instead of a 2, would I ever have found the value equal to, oh, let's see, blank would have worked okay. Anyway, the point is I can make an error here that will never evaluate true. The loop will never want to get out. And so a little safety catch, here's 2 things that are safety catch. Number 1, put in here the keyword do events, one word, DOEVNTS. Here's what happens when I start a loop. VBA says, oh, you want me to do something? Oh, you want me to do it a bunch of times? Great, I love this stuff. It puts its head down and it just starts pounding away at that loop. It doesn't care what else wants to happen on the computer. It's going, no, I'm doing it all. You told me to do it, and I'm doing it. we'll run through that loop as fast as possible. What do events says, it says, listen, interpreter, take a break. Everyone check to see if anything else is going on. When you hit that do events, it's going to look, are there any other events that need to be processed? And the one that you're really looking for is like control break. The keystroke control break on a full keyboard will let you out of that loop. So if you've done something that accidentally puts you into an endless loop and you haven't saved your workbook and you don't have do events, that's great news because you'll get all the practice of writing that code again. It'll be good practice. But you're not going to be able to recover it. Excel might have saved the workbook for you, but that's your only hope. And so the keystroke is CTRL-break. Or pause. It's the break pause key, control break. On some computers, escape will do it as well. Some instances of Excel, I'm not sure which one's which. Your other fail-safe is before you run, just get in the habit of saying, before I run this sub-procedure, save. Save, then run. Save, then that's a good habit to be in, especially for the exam. All right, folks, that's it. Any questions? You've got homework due tonight. It's some kind of, what is it? Chart assignment. So go ahead and do that. I'll post this in Learning Suite shortly. Class dismissed.